All right, I think we're live. We got Joey Hobbs, we got Josh, we got the team at Trace 3.
Hey, David.
How are you doing? Joey, it's been a while, so why don't you give a quick intro about yourself, your background, then maybe dive into what Trace 3 does, and then send it over to Josh.
Yeah, great. So thanks for having us on today. So Joey Hobbs, I'm a former healthcare CIO, worked within a health network here in Indiana for 17 years, a lot of different roles there. Then I spent 4 years at a storage manufacturer. So I ran an Epic Alliance, worked with a lot of healthcare customers across the country. Today I'm with Trace 3. I work out of part of our Eastern division, supporting some of the larger health systems across the Eastern part of the United States. And I'll let Josh touch a little more on Trace 3 and what we're doing, but glad to be on here and talk about data analytics and intelligence. And it's certainly going to be important with everything going on in the industry today.
So, David, you've known Joey for a long time. He loves to deflect right out of the gate. Just go right to me, right? So,
hey, you're the only smart one on here between me and you.
So, hey, David, thanks for having me, and Joey, appreciate the introduction. My name is Josh Lindstrom. I'm responsible for data intelligence at Trace 3 nationally. What does that mean? That means our entire go-to-market strategy around data, partner ecosystem. We've got a delivery arm that's led by our senior data engineer and director of our data engineering, Levi Bowman. And our goal is to help ingest to insight, and we drive toward business outcomes. So all of the pillars that go into that as organizations look to consume data, store data, present data to the business, and then present data to the data science groups. Those are the things that we're focused on. We've got a head of AI, Matt Fernito, who's focused on that. And then one of our senior architects, Eric Hankins, driving a lot of those initiatives. And really our drive is to drive toward business outcomes. A lot of folks these days are really focused in on leveraging data to their advantage, especially in the new environment that we're at. How do we address automation? How do we help drive outcomes? How do we solve those business problems leveraging the data that we have? The challenge is it's very siloed. It's all over the place. How do we gain access to all that data and then be able to drive those outcomes? So I report to our office of the CTO, which is led by Tony Olzak. Part of that group includes a VC team. We have an innovation group, and then we also have a research arm that we give customers full-blown access to some of the newest trends that are out there in the industry. Some of my counterparts lead. We have a cloud practice, all three of the cloud pillars: Azure, AWS, and GCP. We have a security practice led by our CISO and Brian Kissinger, who is driving a lot of the security aspects of that. We have an IT ops led by David Ishmael, who's driving that. And then we've got application migration team and a managed service team that's kind of up and coming. We also have our traditional data center type existence, which from a full-blown data center from front to end, we are the leader when it comes to building out data center infrastructure, compute, storage, network, security wrapped around all of that. And we're leveraging our skill sets and those types of technologies to, again, help solve business problems. So we are about 1.2 billion, about 800 employees or so, and helping a lot of organizations on the enterprise side of the house.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about data analytics, right? I'm a typical healthcare organization on the provider side that wants to be data-driven like everyone else. I probably have a combination of visualization tools spread throughout. I have all kinds of source systems. What should I do? I mean, what should be my playbook first thing coming in? I mean, how would you guys even help me think through this?
Yeah, David, I think the challenge that a lot of organizations see fit, because there's just a huge vendor ecosystem out there. And so what we see a lot of organizations, they get pivoted into just throwing technology at business problems. We tend to take a step back. Not only can we provide, and we want to focus on providing you a playbook, but let's provide you a playbook. Let's look at what consuming data in this new frontier looks like. Let's help you build that modern data platform, call it Gen 2 or whatever you want to see fit. And then let's go solve those business outcomes. I think a lot of the challenges that we see in the healthcare space, particularly in the provider space, is that there's all kinds of vendors saying they can do one thing or the other. A lot of organizations hire Trace3. From our standpoint, to kind of take a step back, let's reevaluate how we address some of those business challenges that we have. And then at the end of the day, we want to make sure that, hey, we're pulling data from wherever we can, because the business is demanding it. The data science teams are demanding it. How do we make sure that we're getting clean data into that platform so that it can be easily consumable? And those are some of the things that we're addressing out of the gate. Now, everybody's on a different journey, David. I don't know what you're seeing out in that space, but from our side, people are kind of either halfway there. We don't see a lot of organizations end to end. And so they're actually trying to get to that next step in getting that new end to end from ingest all the way to insight, because the line of business and the data science teams are asking for that business, or for that data.
Yeah, and I think, we talked about this pre-HIMSS, obviously it didn't happen this year, but we've joked for a number of years, what's the buzzword's going to be? It's been AI and ML in every marketing term that's out there. You look at healthcare organizations, people within the organization assumes, well, I have Epic or I have Cerner, so that means I've already got everything I need from a data perspective. The reality is, in healthcare, if you talk to most executives, they're not getting out of the systems what they actually want or need, unless you're seeing otherwise. But I think most vendors that are selling a product only solves one part of the problem, and they don't know how to look at it holistically. Without Josh and people like him from our team, like you got to take a step back of where it starts, right? It's about data ingestion, and what are we going to do from the start to take all this data from all these different systems? Because even if you're running Epic or one of the major EMR vendors that are out there, you probably still have data in 3, 5, 10 systems, realistically. So I think that's where most people kind of get in trouble, is it's all over the place. It's not normalized. What am I actually going to do with it?
No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. So Josh, if we were to dig in deeper, how would you even help us? Are you coming in with a platform? Are you coming in to help us consolidate platforms, or are you coming in just providing consulting and resources to help get to the point to where we could start? Just give us some details as far as to what they should be thinking about. Because I would say, even for me, at different organizations, sometimes we start with data governance, and you try to build this data governance committee that takes a whole year just to define the various data points. But then I still don't have a true solution. So people are thinking about how can they fast track. I'm just trying to get to the point of what can you do to fast track, and what is your process to help people get into it?
Well, I think our wheelhouse is data engineering, and I think you can't do any of those insights. You can't build governance. You can't do AI and ML unless you have access to the data. And so a lot of the times we're kind of stepping at the front end, like Joey was saying. We're going to the front end and doing rolling our sleeves up with Levi and his team. On our side, we're really rolling up the sleeves and doing the heavy data engineering. I think that piece gets missed because they want to skip that over because they think we can throw technology at that problem. There's a lot of work that goes into collecting streaming data, batch files. How do we get that to a point where we can put some governance on it? We actually take a different approach. We think if we do very good data engineering, governance becomes part of that, right? And as you guys look at compliance and HIPAA and where can we store data, now you have a little bit more control. But it's that front end work from a data engineering perspective that as the data lands in our environment, putting out some governance and some rules around that. How do we then, if we do that heavy lifting, we feel like we can put it into whatever platform is out there, cloud, on-prem, whatever that looks like. And so again, from our perspective, where can I help? We actually invest a lot of time with our counterparts and folks like you, David, where we'll invest in some joint sessions. You guys live in the data every day. You guys are trying to solve those problems. We'll invest some time and take a step back in regards to doing that. We feel like if you build a solid platform, you're going to get outcomes. But in order to do that, you need to do that, roll up the sleeves and heavy heavy data engineering that needs to come into play there. So we kind of take that step approach. We want to help build out the framework, but again, to my point earlier, we want to also drive. We also want to drive the execution of that. How do we identify technologies that make sense? With our VC arm, our innovation arm, and our research arm, we can go talk to some of the new up and coming technology players out there that are helping automate some of those processes. So you don't have to build out a big governance practice. Maybe there's a tool out there that helps you automate some of that governance action. If you're doing some good data engineering, the code coming into the environment is solid. You've built a platform with multiple different cloud data warehouses, or maybe it's the data's on-prem, it's that hybrid environment. Now you can serve data up to the analysts, the folks that actually need to have access to the data, into the data science team with that full wrapper around it. So, with that being said, where do I start? We definitely don't start with pitching technology. We start with, let's take a step back. Let's learn about some of the business challenges you guys are having, and then let's dive into that. We tend to drill projects into those business outcomes. So we're not boiling the ocean, but we're collectively working together to get some of those wins so that you guys can solve those outcomes.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting, Josh and I were on a call last week with one of the very large storage manufacturers that works with NVIDIA and a number of things. And we were talking about, or Josh was mostly talking about one of the projects we had worked on. And one of the interesting comments was almost a thank you from the person on the manufacturer side, and the fact that our work's not done when the gear shows up. Not only he talks about all the work we do on the front end and helping define those things and work through them, but it's really about then validating success and making sure that whatever we establish together that we were going to try to accomplish, that those are done. And I think that's very important and different in what we do. The engagement doesn't stop when something shows up. It's really about the continued reiterations to guarantee success.
No, that's great. So it sounds like we do the data engineering first, and then we're starting to rationalize various tools, but tools definitely come in later. So what are some of the cool tools you're seeing out there, Josh, in the market space that healthcare organizations should be thinking about on the radar, at least?
Yeah, I think in that whole across the board, we're going to be agnostic. We're definitely going to have opinions based on some of the players that are out there. You're seeing some of the folks from our standpoint that I think the beauty part of it is those open source tools that are now becoming commercialized. Databricks being that prime example. But you're seeing like Starburst, PrestoDB, now Starburst, right? You're seeing Kubeflow open source now, the partnership in Aguazio and what they bring to the table from a DevOps perspective, from a Kubeflow perspective. So you're seeing some of those vendors that were predominantly open source now become more commercialized. That's one piece of it. I think it's interesting, some of those legacy players like Informatica and Tibco making some acquisitions to try to be a player, right? I mean, there's some of those types of things. And then, if you're looking at from an ingest perspective, I get calls probably weekly on a new ETL tool that's popping up that collaborates directly with Snowflake, for instance, right? But we're seeing a lot of momentum with Snowflake and Databricks and NVIDIA is one of our top partners around the GPU side of the house, and so that seems to be fit. I do like what ThoughtSpot's doing in the marketplace around AI and ML to kind of give you and those analysts that Google feel to the questions, the asking of the questions before you actually put the data into the dashboard that you need, right? So there's a lot of different plays from that standpoint. And again, we're seeing other technologies. Strim is kind of popping up. Immuta, I think, is if you haven't looked at some of the things that Immuta is doing, right? We recently have been tied into those folks, right? And so we get a lot of those folks, and Savitha, who runs our VC briefing team, she's introducing me to some new and up and coming technologies. We vet those out. Like, for instance, a couple of years back, Dataiku was on our radar. We didn't really have a lot of opportunities. A year and a half later, we are driving Dataiku to help build models from an end-to-end platform perspective. We just had Noodle AI in our for manufacturing around a VC that we're doing, And we're starting to see momentum with Noodle AI. And then above and beyond that, the UI paths and the folks that are doing RPA, right? What does RPA mean? We're building programs around automation as a service, data as a service, AI as a service, and then being able to fulfill it with some of those technology players that are out there. So those are some of the things that we're seeing on our spot. Again, I'm going to be agnostic. I'm going to have opinion based on the use case, but I think the one thing that you'll trust with my team and the Trace3 team is that we'll come in, identify technologies that might make sense. We'll vet them out. We'll drill it down on a use case. And at the end of the day, we feel like a POC would be the last thing, right? It checks off all these boxes. Now let's go see how it works in our environment. And then that POC can then accelerate very quickly because you've done all the upfront work to get to that point. So hopefully that answers your question. And I probably missed a bunch of other ones that we're collaborating and working with from a security side. All the governance players, we see Calibra being a good fit in certain pockets, data guys and those folks being a good play too as well. So it just really depends on we like to leverage organizations, especially in the healthcare space. You've made some investments. Cerner and some of those folks will allow you only to play in certain ball games. So some of the things that we try to do is like, let's leverage the technology that you're already spending. Let's see if we can introduce new technology and help you get to that end-to-end ball game. I keep saying ball game, but that's just me because
it's because you showed a Tampa Bay
baseball.
So you got a Tampa Brady mug already, so that's the reason.
All right, so last question. So what are you seeing as trends in the data space, specifically in healthcare? What are you seeing folks working on?
Well, obviously, I think right now the main focus around research, I think identifying use cases around automation. How do we help automate some of those processes that are out there right now and leverage the data to our advantage? Do we throw software at that, or do we leverage the data that we have available to help automate some of those processes as the new environment becomes relevant, right? I think cost optimization, that's a big piece, especially in the healthcare space as organizations move data to the cloud. Help us get a better handle on when do we move data to the cloud? When do we store it on-prem? When do we store it on-prem and then move it to the cloud? Do we train models on-prem versus put it into the cloud? Those types of things, because cost optimization is becoming key. And we're really focused in on working closely with our cloud team to make sure that foundation and governance is there as you start moving data into those cloud environments, as the SaaS providers start becoming relevant. And then I really think it just from a healthcare perspective, it becomes that siloed data and being able to put it into a single platform so that's very consumable, right? We see a lot of the healthcare space where they've built out data warehouses just to make sure that business, a certain business unit has access to that set of data. And now we've got a whole bunch of data warehouses. How do we consolidate those data warehouses into a single point? And then as IoT becomes relevant, data from all those different sources, how do we pull those all in so that we can leverage it to our advantage? Those are some of the things that we're seeing in the healthcare space, both payer and provider, as they start taking a look at. I think you're going to start seeing, there was this first reaction to COVID. Now you're going to start seeing that next phase of like, okay, if this happens again, how do we leverage data for, again, I said automation, but how do we manage it for crisis management? How do we make sure that we're ahead of the game a little bit more from a data perspective so that if this happens again, we're covered from? And those are some of the trends that we're seeing.
Yeah, and I think even, you touch on COVID a little bit. I think we're going to see, not just the nature of research and trace and, from a population perspective, but the key things I see that are going to be different are telemedicine, right? And so what are we going to do from a data perspective when it starts about telemedicine? You're going to have workforce changes, not only within healthcare, but all industries where, work from home is certainly going to be much more of a norm than what we've ever seen. So I think, to Josh's point, I'm interested for 6 months post all of this to start to see where people really look to take advantage of some of these changes that have happened. And some of the changes certainly have been positive. There's been a number of people that have talked about we would not be where we're at from a telemedicine perspective right now in healthcare if it wasn't for COVID. I mean, we've had the technology for years, and it's finally implemented. So I think data likely, some of that will fall behind if organizations are willing to put the focus on doing that. And, certainly it takes the talent within healthcare from a data scientist or data intelligence perspective isn't always there, especially if you look at rural areas. Some organizations just don't have that talent. And I think that's where we certainly are helping a number of folks out with that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Sounds like RPA, AI, I think all the above are going to be definitely the hot trend. I just want to solve one question. How much does it take to take care, or how much does it cost to take care of this one patient in the hospital? We still can't figure that out to the line item detail in the hospital setting, unfortunately. So
yeah, David,
we'll get them soon.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because everybody wants to do AI and ML. You can't do any of that unless you have access to data. I mean, that's a simplified version to one thing that we're seeing. And so if we can give it access, you start seeing what our CTO calls the art of the possible. You start seeing like some possibilities that are out there to be able to go drive down. And now you start solving those business problems. So, yeah.
Yep, definitely. All right. Great talking to you, Joey. Great talking to you, Josh. It's always good to catch up.
Yeah, David. Hey, thanks so much for having us on. Really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks. We'll do it again.
Okay. Take care.
Yep.